The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to this. We got a great show for you today. I'm so excited to be here. For those of you who don't know, I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm a proud pony. Pony is a parent of a neurodiverse individual. Those are the words that my son and I use to describe me and my relationship to a diagnosis that he got when he was 2.5. So our very unique journey. But I'm thrilled to be here with you guys this morning and premiere this amazing show. We're in April, and in April, of course, we're talking all things autism and advocacy and action and being accomplices and all the A words, right? But I also like to remind all of us that there's a lot more going on than just autism, right? And so I'm thrilled because, the human spirit is so amazing. I'm thrilled that a little bit later on in the show, we're going to welcome for the first time to the show, Jane Fischer. She's written a really amazing book that I recommend. The title of the book is You Knew Suzy. The subtitle is Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never. Now, in the book, she details her journey with her daughter, Suzy. And there's the book title for you. And, it's really a testament to the spirit of our kids and to the spirit of individuals and the spirit of a parent who hears a limiting thing from a professional and says, yeah, no, we're going to push harder past that. We're going to see what's possible. Right. And I think that part of this story is what really sings to me and what I hope will sing to all of you. So we're going to talk to Jane in just a little bit. Wow. So first of all, though, we're premiering this show for the first time. Woo! And we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. It'll be available later on as a podcast. Our fabulous Chris Desmond is showing you some of the different ways that you can view the show. Keep in mind that the show will exist on our YouTube channel, Autism Live. You can go to youtube.com/autism live and you can go back through 14 years. I mean, officially right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we're starting into the 15th year of production, which is crazy to think about. I'm going to check my math to see if that's true. But so it's all there on the YouTube channel. But keep in mind that I know that most of you are listening in podcast. We do put out the audio only version on every single podcast platform in which you can download the podcast for free. It has been our mission from day one that we wanted this information. Our whole goal at the Autism Network is to provide information and inspiration to you. And when I say you, we're talking about that larger autism community. Starts, of course, with individuals who are themselves on the spectrum of autism, right? Whatever word you use, whether you use autistic or have autism or neurodivergent or neurodiverse, we embrace all of those terms here and many more. I'm sure you could all tell me many, many more than that. But we also, beyond the people who actually are on the spectrum, we also, our audience is individuals who love those individuals. If you love and care about someone on the spectrum, we want you to find a home here too, because we know that you have hopes and dreams and plans and challenges and ways that you want to learn to be a better advocate, a better accomplice, right? Because together it makes this beautiful autism community, which I hope will someday be the whole world. Like it should be. The world should be filled with people who love, respect, revere, and admire individuals who are on the spectrum. And until they do, we're going to keep fighting the good fight, right? And supporting those of you who do, like myself. So that is why we're here. Now, if you watch the show, you know at the beginning of the show, we regularly do jargon of the day, where we pick a jargon term and we try to bring two different definitions. When we first started this, it really was about taking a book definition and making fun of it. I'll tell you, the book definitions have gotten so much better. There's nothing to be made fun of. But now we still give you two different definitions because sometimes one gets a little bit more to the heart of how it may be of interest to us. Now, today we took a very particular jargon term because as we talk with Jane about her daughter ultimately got a diagnosis of Joubert Syndrome. This was a term that I did not know. And in case you guys don't know, we wanted it to be the jargon of the day so that we would have that base of knowledge going into talking to Jane with her daughter. So we're going to give you first one definition and then another definition because this may be of interest to you. It may be something that you potentially might want to genetically test for. So let's take a look at our first definition of Joubert Syndrome. Joubert Syndrome is a rare genetic disorder that affects the brain, causing a distinctive set of physical and developmental abnormalities. That comes to us from Google AI. And we'll talk a little bit more with Jane about some of the ways in which this manifested in her daughter. But let's go to our other definition. Joubert syndrome is a rare genetic condition characterized by abnormal brain development that includes the absence or underdevelopment of the cerebral vermis. I hope I'm saying that right. An area of the brain that controls balance and coordination, and a malformed brain stem. And that comes to us directly from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. What we see and what Suzy overcame is that often with Joubert syndrome, there is, what Jane was told, and we'll let her talk about this. Her daughter was not going to walk, and her daughter was not going to speak, and her daughter was not going to understand. But fortunately, Jane and her family decided that they were going to let Suzy tell them what was possible. So we're going to talk more about that, and you'll hear from Jane about her recommendations about us getting tested for that and why that might be something that's really important for you. So we've learned something new today, and we're going to learn more about it. We're going to take a short break where we're going to show you some of the different things that are happening here in April, and then we are going to be back with Jane Fischer, author of If You Knew Suzy, subtitled Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never, right after this message. Stick with us.
It's that time of year. April has finally arrived. This week we have all new shows. On Monday, Shannon welcomes Jane Fischer, author of If You Knew Suzy, Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never. Then on Tuesday, on Ask Dr. Doreen, Shannon and Dr. Doreen discuss the topic of toileting and potty training. On Wednesday, it's Autism Awareness Day, and Shannon is joined by actor Kobe Bird. On Thursdays and Fridays, we are excited to introduce Autism Live in Spanish throughout all of April.
Buenos días y bienvenidos a Autism Live. Soy Shannon Penrod.
This Thursday's show covers how you can support someone you love with ASD, and on Friday's show, Shannon breaks down what ABA is. Join us at 10 a.m. every day throughout April. The Autism Network, providing information and inspiration to families for over 14 years.
As I mentioned, we have a really lovely guest who's going to be joining us right now. I'm talking about Jane Fischer. Jane became a special education professional, teacher of handicapped and learning consultant after her daughter was born. She has since served as an advocate for thousands of special needs children and families. She lives in New Jersey in the United States, and she has written a book that I think is going to be very important and inspirational to so many of you who are watching. The name of the book, which makes me emotional because I have always loved the song, If You Knew Suzy. But the subtitle is Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never. I know that speaks to a lot of us. So it's a really heartfelt, honest book talking about one mom's journey after the medical professionals weigh in and say one thing, but in your heart and in your gut, you feel that there's more and you see more in your child and you're not going to give up. I don't know. It's making me verklempt. Let's welcome Jane to the show. Jane, I'm so delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's such a joy. So the book is called If You Knew Suzy, Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never. Maybe start by telling us a little bit about, because it takes a lot to write a book, right? That's some time that you put aside. What inspired you that this was something you needed to put in the world?
Well, Suzy, who just turned 50 a couple of months ago.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It was a milestone. It has been my lifelong mission to write a book about Suzy because for the past 50 years, we have been on an incredible journey. And as I said in the title, of nevers. And I was told that she would never walk, talk, learn. And this goes back 50 years. So you could imagine, there were very few resources at that time. And I have watched her struggle, but yet I have watched her fight and overcome, and she has defied the sentence in that was prognosticated. And I wanted to put down in a book on paper all of the challenges that she faced and all of the triumphs that she accomplished. And I also felt it was important because I know she'll never get married and she'll never have children. And, I wanted to keep her legacy alive for future generations, as well as I believe it's an inspirational story that really speaks to the power of the human spirit. And hopefully it will help other people as well.
And I in no way want to discount, Suzy's beautiful story and her will and her determination. But let's be honest here too. You were somebody who said, no, I don't accept this. I don't accept what you're telling me. What was the sentence that they said to you? What was the prognosis?
Well, basically, and as I say, we went back, going back 50 years. So we were told that she had pervasive brain dysfunction, and all the testing that was done indicated that, as I say, her motor skills were very limited. She would probably never walk. It was pretty much determined that she would never talk. And Suzy is my second child. So I had a 2.5. I have another daughter, an older daughter who was 2.5 at the time. And we were traveling all over the country, living near New York. We were going to Columbia Presbyterian. We were going to New York University, man. So I know all the top-notch hospitals. And it was a very grim prognosis. I was all of 24 years old. What did I know?
I was going to ask you if you were 10, because I don't think anybody believe that you have a 50-year-old daughter.
Oh, I do. I have a 53-year-old daughter too.
Amazing.
As well.
Jane, we want to know what your skincare regimen is.
I believe lots of hard work. But we were very, I didn't know, as I say, where to begin. There was no Google,
Right.
You couldn't just Google what neurologically impaired or brain dysfunction or all the other labels that were placed on her. I only knew that this was my baby, and whatever potential, whatever we had to do to reach that potential, hopefully to maximize it, we were going to do it. My husband also was a very young man. We're the same age, 24. He looks older though.
Don't tell him you said that.
We won't tell him. We started that journey. My brother, who was doing a residence then in pediatrics, accompanying me to a world-renowned pediatrician at the time. And I remember clearly leaving the office, and I looked at him, and he said, you could buy stock and Kleenex and cry for the rest of your life, or you could start fighting. And I said, you know what? That's what we're going to do. We are going to what, and I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that no one was going to tell me to find a residential placement for my baby. And we were going to start fighting. And fortunately, Suzy herself, as an infant, and again, I could talk about this a little more, but she always seemed to know what she should be doing. And she always had that determination, that drive to strive for attaining the unattainable.
Yeah. I think one of the amazing things to me is that when a parent talks about their child, right? We tend to talk about them with all the capabilities that they can do. But I wonder if you could take us through. So you're 24 years old, you've got a 2.5-year-old, and you've got this baby that they've given you these devastating things that I'm sure there had to have been some use of Kleenex for a while, because I don't know how you could not. But like, what was your day to day like? Because when we talk about a child with a disability, I honestly believe that people don't understand. So walk us through, because people may not understand, what were you needing to do on a daily basis to support her? What did your life look like?
Well, that was, as I say, there was no internet. So I had to start. And I started by, I realized that I needed help in knowing what to do for her. So we started to look for I had a pediatrician who was wonderful, and he told me there's something called infant stimulation that I think you might want to look into. Well, how do you look into it? As I say, that you couldn't Google it. So I started to make lots and lots of phone calls, and it was difficult because, as I say, I had a 2.5-year-old with a new baby, and my 2.5-year-old, whose name is Beth, she needed a lot of attention. You come home with a new baby, and that, if everything is perfect, has its own challenges. So fortunately, I had a wonderful one. I had, and I lost her a few years ago, a wonderful mom who would appear at my doorstep at 7 o'clock in the morning with dinner for the rest of the week. And I started to make phone calls to find out where an infant stimulation program existed. And honestly, to this day, I will tell all the parents out there who have young children or have new babies, get involved with infant stimulation, not only for your child, but it's a support group for you. I happen to find one. As I say, I live in Livingston, New Jersey, and after making lots and lots of phone calls, I found an infant stimulation program at Huntington Hospital in Flemington, which was about an hour and a half from my house. It started at 8 o'clock in the morning. So somehow I had to leave the latest by 6:30. This was a typical day, 6:30 to get to Flemington by 8 o'clock with Suzy. But what it did was it gave me the tools. It helped it to stimulate, I believe, all those neural pathways that were intact. It gave me the tools to help her be stimulated constantly with all kinds of therapies that existed then, and taught me how to transfer some of these skills to the home. So I would leave the house 4 days a week at 6:30. We would go to Huntington Hospital. We would get home by noon, and typically Suzy was exhausted then, and she would go in for a nap. But again, I had a toddler at home that needed my attention as well.
Where was that while you were in Flemington?
She would usually stay with my mom. And Beth was a very needy toddler in that she was very, very attached to me. it was difficult for her. She didn't want me to leave, even though she adored my mom. She wanted me to be at home with her. Sometimes my mom would come with me with Beth, and we would try to make her. They didn't encourage siblings to come at that time, but they did allow her to come a couple of days a week, and we try to make her part of the therapies. And she became one of Suzy's, without recognizing it, as a toddler, she became one of Suzy's greatest advocates and therapists, because she would include, there was so much language therapy. They played house, they played store, they played school. And she actually became one of Suzy's most influential therapists, just by incorporating her in her daily play.
I love that.
Yeah.
I would say the siblings grow up to be the most incredible people.
Absolutely.
Because they're the most flexible. They see something and they jump in. They're kind. They have to be accepting of different things in different ways. I think eventually siblings are going to rule the world.
Yeah, unquestionably. And, I always worried that she would be resentful, and she would, because Suzy did require so much attention, but Beth was a part of it with us. She never was on the sidelines. She was really one of her, as I say, her greatest attributes. And when I think about it now, of course, we'd all play together, but it was language therapy in the most purest form. It was motor therapy in the purest form. And it was interesting because Suzy always watched Beth accomplish, a task. And she always seemed to, it was very important for Suzy to be able to model that task. She emulated Beth, and it grew to be a very, very special relationship, and a very close relationship to this day.
How wonderful. How wonderful. So I have to be honest, I want to go back and talk about the infant stimulation, because it's a term that I'm unfamiliar with, and you gave it such high marks. What you said, it's a lot of different things. But of course, when we hear stimulation in today's world, we're like, oh, it's not shock therapy, right? There's no electricity.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kinds of things are they doing with them to help them, why the word stimulation? Tell me a little bit about it.
So again, Suzy was 3 months old. So we're talking about an infant here.
Yeah.
So, we talk about, there's a lot of what they call, I'm sure you're familiar, tactile stimulation, where they teach you how to stroke the child with all different, with gentle feather, with just rubbing the arm, and at the same time maybe incorporating some music, continually talking to the child, singing songs, holding the child in different positions. I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but what you're really doing is you are stimulating the brain. The child isn't just languishing.
You're engaging. You're attempting to engage them with all of their senses.
All of the senses. And that's what infant stimulation is. It's really stimulating all of the senses in different ways with different modalities, but you're constantly bringing in stimuli for the child. Even Suzy had a very rare vision problem called congenital ocular motor apraxia. It was very hard for her to follow. In fact, we didn't even know if she had sight until she was 3 months old, because she couldn't follow any objects. And they taught me how to do tracking with her. If you're familiar, tracking is a way to have a child follow a I'll use a finger, follow a finger. How it sounds very simplistic, but because she had such a hard time, they taught me how to stimulate her to try to at least engage.
Yeah.
And
so you were doing this every day when she was a baby.
yeah,
and
correct.
And then you were taking her, doing that, then bringing her home and trying to engage and use the things that you learned there at home.
Exactly.
And how long did you do that for?
Okay. So we did that till she was about a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And then the program pretty much, they guide you to find other programs. So until she was a year old, we were at Huntington Hospital. And then we went on. Easter Seals sponsored a program in Morris Plains, New Jersey. And we graduated, if you will, to the Easter Seals program. Now, when Suzy was a year old, she was not walking, she was not sitting. All her milestones were delayed significantly. And they felt she needed a program where it was more therapeutic. There was speech therapy, there was occupational therapy, there was physical therapy, and there was psychological counseling, which I think I needed at that point even more than she did. Yeah. And we graduated to a program, as I say, sponsored by Easter Seals, and we went 5 mornings a week. It was a little closer to my house. It was only about 25 minutes to my house. And we went every single day. And part of the program, which is also a very, very essential part of having a child with disabilities, is they had support programs for parents and siblings. It was built into the program. Suzy was receiving all her therapies, which I can talk to you about, in a little bit. And the other part of it, which was crucial, I was having issues. Having a child with disabilities impacts a family. It's anyone who thinks you can get through this unscathed is only deceiving themselves. My husband was in denial. My in-laws and even my mom, were somewhat in denial. I was the crate bearer. I was the one who they kept telling me, oh, don't worry, she'll be okay. She's just a little bit delayed. And I knew she wasn't just a little bit delayed. There was a reason for her being a lot delayed. And the program had a component where couples were part of a group of people who could. No one understands you better than another group that's going through the same thing. They say you don't know what anything is like until you walk in those shoes. And what I found was a lot of the dads were in denial. They needed a wake-up call. And at one point, and I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself. If I am, please stop me.
Oh, this is you telling your story. You tell it the way you want.
Yeah. Well, at one point, my husband, they had it was a Saturday morning program, and they had the dads bring the children, not moms had to stay home. And it was a turning point for my husband anyway, because when he saw Suzy with all the other children and realized that what she should be doing and wasn't doing, I think it was an epiphany for him. He recognized that I wasn't making this up. I wasn't wearing blinders. I wasn't looking at a rosy garden. She had significant problems. And I think being part of a program that offered that kind of support for couples, for mothers individually, for fathers individually, was very, very important. They also had a sibling program. And the day that I took Beth was very interesting, because when we went home that day, she said to me, Mommy, why is Suzy with all those children? And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, there are children in wheelchairs, and there are children who can't see, and there are children who can't. And, it opened up a dialogue for me to say to her, Beth, honey, Suzy is there because Suzy also has problems. Suzy also has special needs. Well, what do you mean, mommy, special needs? And again, it enabled me to begin the discussion with her that her sister was different. Her sister was very, very special, and it didn't in any way minimize the way we love her or will care for her, but it does mean that she has special needs and issues that other children her age do not have. And it was a very difficult time for the whole family to accept that reality. But once we did accept it, we had to move forward as a unit.
And you detail all of this beautifully in the book. It seems to me that the book is really a testament to the fortitude of you and your family and Suzy herself, and an inspirational message to parents about not limiting yourself and your beliefs and your hopes for your child. But I'm curious, what was the mission for you? What was the message you wanted to convey in the book?
The message to or anyone, and as you will read in the book, her special needs turned out to be less of an issue than later on, and you will read this later. At 24, she was diagnosed with end-stage kidney failure. And she's had 2 kidney transplants, and in between the transplants, she's had thyroid cancer. So she's had a lot of medical issues. And what I really, in spite of all of it, she has maintained this ebullient, this spirit, this ability to reach out and touch everyone she meets with love and kindness and compassion. And the message that I really wanted to convey was watching Suzy every day of her life struggle, and yet never give up, continue to believe in her ability to accomplish. I wanted people to take away, the takeaway was to never, ever, ever say, and it's been our mantra, they can't, they won't, it's too hard. And all of that is something that I would be unrealistic. We all feel at times, but after feeling it, experiencing it, they're not to give in to it. And I do, as I said before, she is a testament to the human spirit. And what I really want people to take away is and particularly mothers and fathers, listen to your gut. No one knows your child like you do. I'm not unrealistic. Suzy's limitations are real, and they'll be there forever. But in spite of the limitations, I want people to also recognize the abilities, the accomplishments, the need to, in all due respect to the professionals, your child, and do not allow anyone to tell you that they'll never do that, because I've been told all the nevers, and I've watched her go beyond and go forward.
And there is Suzy. Let's talk about Suzy now. You mentioned that she's 50. What is she like now, and what is her life like now?
She's amazing. She is so beloved. And, I've watched her, as I say, melt the hardest of hearts. And it's not calculated, because she doesn't know how to calculate. She doesn't know how to lie. She doesn't know how to manipulate. She's truly the purest form of a human being. She's probably what God meant us all to be, but we kind of get corrupted by life. But I've watched her melt the hardest of hearts just with her goodness and her decency. As I say, we've been through hell and back with the medical issues. And the very, very interesting story that when we went to a very, very well-known nephrologist, and when doctors look at her IQ and they read her reports, they don't even make eye contact with her. They assume that, well, she won't understand anything. So we were talking to this doctor, and it was when she needed her kidney transplant, and he was telling us all that went into kidney transplants, and she raised her hand because he wasn't looking at her, and she said, Dr. So-and-so, she said, you don't understand. I don't want my sister to be tested. She's only 28. She's not married. She has to have babies. I don't want her kidney.
Wow.
This doctor looked at me and he said, oh my God, I don't have Harvard graduates who think like that.
Yeah.
He said, she's amazing. He said, don't ever let anyone judge her by her IQ score. And, I looked at him and I said, I never have, and I never will. And you have to get to know Suzy, because her EQ, and anyone who, that's her emotional intelligence.
Right.
Is so much, it's astounding, what she can pick up and what she recognizes. If you look at her IQ, you never think that would be capable, but she understands people. She is so beloved by people. She has a little job in a preschool. She's kind of an aide to an aide. And we just, at her 50th birthday party, she's been working there for 20 years now. They just adore her. And as I was, just to share a little story with you, as I picked her up a few months ago, the rabbi who is at the temple preschool said, I try to teach lessons from my pulpit every week. Some people listen, some people don't, some people fall asleep. He said, but she walks into this building every day and teaches each and every one of us lessons. Mm. And it's so true. I mean, she has this uncanny ability. One thing I will tell you is she has this uncanny ability to remember details, dates, names. My head is so cluttered that half the time I defer to her, but she'll walk in and she'll say, hi, Max, how's your toe today? I heard you had an infection, and are you soaking it? And she'll remember people's birthdays. She'll remember special occasions. She always has this upbeat personality and finds the good. She finds the good in everyone she meets and every situation that she encounters.
That's amazing. I want to know, what does she think about your book?
Well, it's really it's interesting. She, when it came out, she reads probably on a 3rd, 4th grade level. She comprehends, on about a 5th, 6th grade level. And I put it on Audible. And I said to her, we're sitting down and we're reading, and I gave her a copy of the book. And I said, we're reading it together. And it was very interesting because she didn't know some of the things that happened very early on in infancy. And she said, really, Mommy? They told you I would never walk and talk? She said, they didn't know me. I said, no, I guess they only knew your CAT scan. Right. But, she went, and this was very poignant. It's always been very painful to Suzy. We have a very close family, and my brother's children, and my son, who is 10 years, actually he's 7 years younger than Suzy and 10 years younger than Beth. They went on, and that's another whole story. You're the position in the family, the younger child who surpasses their older sister. It's very difficult for them, and I could talk about that a little bit more later. But when she read the book, she was thrilled. She said, oh, Mommy, she said, I'll never have a baby. and I'll never get married. But I have a book.
Yeah,
I have a book all about me.
that's amazing.
She said, and as I said before, with all the cousins who are all married with babies, and my son and daughter who are married, this was her. Since she said, "This is my baby. This is my baby," and when she said that, I said, "Mission accomplished." That's what I wanted. You asked me why. I wanted her to have her own special,
It's her legacy.
yeah, legacy.
Amazing.
Exactly.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Jane Fischer, and we're talking about her book, If You Knew Suzy, Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never. This is available pretty much everywhere, right, Jane? They can get it any major bookseller.
Yeah, it's online. I'm on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble,
There we
and
go.
it can be ordered any place.
There we go. A really incredible book. You mentioned before about the toll that this takes on the family.
Yes.
And I appreciated that you said, anybody who says it doesn't, they're lying to themselves. But now you're 50 years down the road. So we can look at it and go, what was the long-term effect, both of your marriage and on the siblings? And
Mm.
and I appreciate that it's different, that a sibling that's a couple of years older versus a sibling that's 7 years younger, and one male and one female. Talk to us a little bit about, as well as you, how did everybody fare through this? How did you keep it together?
With a lot of difficulty. Again, I would be disingenuous if I told you that we got through this unscathed, because that's not true. My daughter went on. She became a teacher. She's the mother of two beautiful teenagers.
Mhm.
Um, but again, if you and she was again always one of Suzy's greatest fans and advocates. But I do think that there's a price to be paid. As hard as I tried to give everyone their fair share, there was only one me, and I did go back to work. I went back to graduate school. I got my teacher certification as a special ed teacher, and then I went on and got my master's as a learning consultant. So I went back to work. I took care of my mom, who was aging, and there just wasn't enough hours in a day. I wanted, my son is 43, and I wanted a third, and this was, I think it's an interesting part of the book too. I've always wanted a third child. My husband was not on board because he was afraid, which I understood. We were told etiology unknown. We were told that Suzy's problems were, they were just a fluke of nature. We had no idea, what all this was coming from. And my brother, who, as I say, was as a doctor, and he was a geneticist at University of Pennsylvania. About 45 years ago, we went down to the University of Pennsylvania, and we went for all kinds of genetic testing, and we were told that there's no reason to believe that there was a genetic connection. If I wanted a third child, there was no more of a chance of having another child with disabilities than any other, than the mainstream population. So through a lot of convincing, a lot of talking, we did go on, and we had our third baby, who was such a love, really, really such a terrific young man now. And he was 7 years younger than Suzy, always her champion. And her relationship with him was different than it was with Beth, because she perceived herself as the older sister, another mother.
Right.
Beth, who was 10 at the time, she just adored Ben, my son's name. And Suzy went along, and, she wanted to be a mother too. But it wasn't as easy for Suzy, because Suzy didn't always know how to play. And I think you know what I mean
Yeah.
by that. Whereas with a baby, when you took Jack and Jill went up and there's a certain sing song, there's a certain way to interact, there's a certain silliness that wasn't part of Suzy. Suzy, that's living life in the gray. Suzy is black and white, So it was difficult. Ben always kind of gravitated towards Beth because she was more fun, And then, of course, as he got older and he realized that Suzy had special needs, and he was always so sensitive and kind. But what was how he began to read better than Suzy. He began to ride a two-wheeler, something that she wanted to do for such a long time. And it became very, very complicated, the whole relationship. We found that he was actually holding himself back because he didn't want to make her feel badly.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So the dynamics in the family were very complex. And when I think back now, I have to be honest, you wonder how you did it, because I was dealing with so many different levels and so many different personalities and so many different issues.
Yeah, you were balancing a lot.
Yes, we did. And then, of course, there was my husband, out there who once in a while kind of waved and said, hi, what about me? And if I had to say I give him all the credit for this, he was a really good sport, because he knew that for me to have any peace in this life, I needed to do everything and anything that as I said early on, I swore I was going to help her reach her potential and maximize it. And for me to do that, there were only 24 hours in a day, so there were issues in my marriage, there were times I'm sure he wanted to run, times I wanted to run. And we kind of just stayed glued, because as he would say, if he were here, because he's such a responsible person, and he worked very, very hard, because early on, and you'll read it in the book, Suzy's expenses were all out of pocket. Nothing was covered, because according to New Jersey law, the district wasn't responsible till she was 5. And as I said, we started very, very early, and it meant sacrificing a lot of our own resources to do what we had to for Suzy and for Beth at that time. And it takes a village, I was lucky that as I said to you before, I had a wonderful mother. My mother-in-law tried to do what she could. And my brothers and their wives. I mean, I had tremendous emotional support. But the bottom line is, it's a solo flight,
and it takes a toll.
It takes a toll.
It takes a
huge toll.
But I imagine you couldn't have chosen anything else but to be her best advocate.
I wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah, I don't think it was in you. I don't think it's in a lot of us. But, I think sometimes people forget that takes a toll.
Yes.
Because we're running low on time, I want to make sure that we talk about in the book, and we want to make sure that people get the book and read the book, because there's so much there, information. You list a bunch of resources in the resource section that are very important to you. I don't want you to tell us everything, right? Because I want people to get the book, but give us one. What's your number one resource for families that you always want to let people know?
Well, depending on the issue, I mean, the spectrum of disabilities is very great. But I've always found Easter Seals to be a tremendous resource for me. Association, and of course, because I'm a learning consultant, the Association for Exceptional Children is also a wonderful resource. The Autism Live, Autism, there are quite a few resources that I found very, very helpful. And I think it's important as parents that, as I said before, we have a support system for one another. That was invaluable to me.
I really see for the autism community, that's something, in terms of a disability, we're kind of the new kids on the map, even though we've been here forever. But
Yes.
it's one of the things that as services and therapies were growing, it kind of got left by the wayside, and it's few and it's not that it's not there. It's just
Yes.
not at the forefront like what you were describing. And it's remiss. It's a problem that needs to be solved. There are wonderful organizations like, of course, what comes to mind immediately is the Ed Asner Family Center, which when they created it, set at the forefront is the mental health of the entire family. And so there are support services for everyone, but that's not the norm in the autism community, which is a bummer because we need it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We need it.
And I also, keep in mind, we talked a lot about infancy, but time marches on. And before you know it, your children graduate and services. Unfortunately, we keeping in mind that our children are going to need support throughout their lifetime. And I think it's really critical that we as parents, keep in mind that we have to prepare. We have to prepare for as best we can. And I struggle with this to this day. What's going to happen when I'm not here anymore?
Yeah. What is the plan? Do you have a plan?
We best we can. I mean, now, as I say, my daughter has 2 children. My son has 2 children. And they're totally devoted to Suzy. They adore her. They make her she's part of their lives. But Shannon, I'm not foolish enough to believe that they can do what I do. They have their own lives and their own problems and their own issues. They will do what they can, but believe me, I lie awake at night wondering what's going to happen. Yes, do we have a plan? She's part of a supervised living program now called Jespy House.
Okay.
Which is she loves, and we hope we've done our special needs planning, with lawyers, and you do the best you can, but if there's no when we're not here anymore, we hope and pray.
Well, I will say, here, because we're in California, and California has the self-determination program, which is really, but you have a new self-determination program in New Jersey.
Yes.
And so have you guys been looking at all at that?
She's part of that. Yes. Yes. She's part of that self-determination. Now we have to fight to make sure that all our, all these services remain in place.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. From your mouth to God's ear. Before I leave you, I don't want to be remiss and leave out that you did this book with Carol and Ross. Talk a little bit about that collaboration and how that came to be.
Okay, Carol, and then I will tell you a little bit of Joubert's, because I want people to also know that you can be tested, and it is a gene. It's a very new gene, but it can be identified. Carol Ann, as I say, the book was a lifetime goal for me, and as I said before, between 2 other children, my husband, my mother, working, blah blah blah, I needed help. I needed some help. And a very close friend of mine knew Carol Ann, and she said, listen, there's no shame in asking for help. You want this to get done, you need to help someone to help. I tend to be verbose. You might have gathered that. Yeah. I try not to be, but when it comes to Suzy, there's so much to say. Anyway, Carol Ann helped me really organize, put things down, rein me back, tell me, you know what, it's enough already. She's an extraordinary woman. Without her, the book I wouldn't have gotten done. I'm very grateful to her for helping me just put it all down on paper in an organized, I hope, eloquent way.
Love it. Love it. And so you take a minute to talk about Joubert.
Okay, very, Yeah, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, but I do want people to know. As I told you before, we were told etiology unknown. When Suzy was diagnosed with kidney failure, my brother, who I told you is a geneticist at Penn, he started to do all kinds of research. And it turns out that Suzy has a very rare syndrome called Joubert syndrome that was only identified several years ago. So it wasn't known when we were planning that third pregnancy. And in a way, I'm kind of glad, because we never would have had my son, who is joy of my life, and one of the joys of my life. And anyway, it turned out my brother brought us down to Penn. My husband and I have an autorecessive gene. It's a very, very, very rare gene. It's rare for one person to have, but for two people to have it, it's like one in millions. And Wow. It turns out we both have it, and Suzy has it.
Wow.
So right now, what we know, because it is such a new syndrome, Suzy is the oldest in the world that we know of that have Joubert's. I'm sure there are other people who have had Joubert's, but it wasn't identifiable.
Right.
So she is being watched. It's being studied at the University of Washington, and all eyes are on Suzy, because once again, she is a trailblazer. And I don't know how the syndrome is going to unfold, but
you can get tested now.
And get tested. Yes. Yes. The gene is identifiable. And I would urge anyone who is interested in genetic testing should add that to the testing.
Well, Jane, it's just been delightful talking with you. What an amazing mom you are. And really an inspiration to all of us with that can-do attitude. I just want to remind everybody, the name of the book is If You Knew Suzy. The subtitle is Pushing Past the Boundaries of Never. I think that really resonates with a lot of us. Who, when we come up against a diagnosis and somebody puts a limiting belief on our child, and we decide we're going to push past that. And we're going to allow our children to show us who they are. It's a beautifully told story. We thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. If people want to know more about your story, where do you encourage them to go, aside from buying the book?
Yeah, they could actually email me. I get lots of emails. I'll be glad. That's part of our mission, to help anyone and everyone in any way we can. So I could give you my email.
If you want to put your email out, that's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that.
Okay, so you can either say it, or we can say to people that they should email me and I forward it to you. It's up to you.
Perhaps that's better. Yeah, that would be a good idea.
So if you want to talk to Jane about her story and Suzy's story, write to me. You guys know my email is shannon@autism-live.com. I will forward anything to Jane, so that you guys can be talking directly to Jane. So shannon@autism-live.com. And then I will happily forward that to you, Jane. Thank you so much for your story and how inspirational it is. You really touched my mom heart today.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for having me. And I so appreciate your helping us to spread the word.
We're spreading the word. All right. That's all we have time for today. I hope you guys are watching closely the calendar with all the amazing guests that we have during this wonderful, amazing month where we're raising awareness, acceptance, activism, all the A words. So check out the schedule to see what's coming next. Until then, we want to give you a hug and your kiddos as well. So take care until then. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.